All right, Madam Clerk, we have quorum. The time is 7:03. Welcome. This is General Committee, Tuesday, October 18th. I will start off by asking for a declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. And seeing none, I will ask for an approval of the agenda as amended. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gardner, comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Madam Clerk. We will go right to determination of items requiring separate discussion. I'll start with Councillor Perry on my left.
None tonight.
Councillor Kim.
Sorry, 4 and 6.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tom.
4 was pulled, thank you.
Mayor Dahl.
I'm thinking we should probably pull item 1.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move on. Councillor Thompson.
Item 3 and item 12, please.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. 9, 12, and 13.
I believe 12 was pulled. Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry, 9,
12
12
was
was
pulled.
pulled, 9, 13, and 15.
15?
No. 14, what is 14?
Number 14 has to be pulled because of directions.
Councillor Maracus will pull for direction. Thank you, Councillor. All right. Is there any others that need to be pulled? We'll do a recap. I'll ask the clerk to pull them off, please.
The items that have been pulled are item 1, 3, 4, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14, and 15.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Then could I have... Oh, Councillor Gardner?
I have a question on number 11.
We'll pull 11 as well. Thank you. So we have items 2, 5, 7, 8, 10 for adoption of items not requiring separate discussion. Could I have a motion? Councillor Tom, Councillor Kim, comments, questions? We don't normally have that. I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Madam Clerk. Tonight for delegations, Madam Clerk? We have one. And could I ask Ms. Lauren Capilongo, representing FGKW Retirement Living Incorporated, to come speaking on item 1. I have asked for 5 minutes, and if you need more time, we'll address it at that time.
Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Lauren Capilongo. I am a land use planner with the firm Malone Given Parsons, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant. The purpose of my deputation tonight is really just to highlight some changes that have occurred to the site plan since you last saw it, I think on October 13th, and answer any questions that the committee may have. So I'll try and keep within my 5 minutes. Just as most of you know, the site is at 145 Murray Drive. It's the southwest corner of Murray and Seton Drive, and it's currently occupied by an existing retirement residence with 52 units. And the applicant did file a site plan amendment application to permit a 4-story, 78-unit addition to that retirement residence. Since the application was last in front of committee on the 13th of September, there's a couple of items that have changed. We did head to Committee of Adjustment last week and received approval for 3 minor variances. They related to a reduction in the rear yard setback, a reduction in the minimum maneuvering space, and a reduced parking ratio for the property. Also, what we've done is we've met with some of the local residents that did voice some concerns over the application, and really the purpose was to understand their concerns and look for opportunities to adjust the site plan where feasible. So here's the overall site plan that was presented to you at the September 13th meeting. Like I said, it's a 4-story addition to the existing retirement residence. And there's 2 proposed driveway accesses, one from Seton and one from Murray Drive. And there's also a parking lot proposed along the south side of the building. This is the revised site plan, and by and large, it does look unchanged, but we did make some changes to the plan that I'll highlight, and they relate to building height, truck traffic and waste disposal, landscaping, and fencing. So one of the primary concerns that we did hear from committee and as well as some of the neighboring residents was with respect to building height. The image at the top is the elevation drawing that was previously before committee, and it shows a 4-story building with a peaked roof articulation. When we met with the residents, they expressed a concern over the building height, and we looked for opportunities to reduce that. And so as part of the revised site plan, and it's the drawing on the bottom, we moved from the peaked roof articulation to a flat roof scenario, which reduced the overall building height. Yeah, this is, this is the east building elevation, which is really the view when you're standing at Murray Drive. And the proposed building height is 12.8 meters. And to put that into context, the existing retirement residence is about 8.5 meters in height. So the difference we're looking at is about just over 4 meters, and it's a difference of 1 story. The second item is waste disposal and truck traffic. We did hear from the residents that they had some concern about existing waste disposal on the site. And we looked at part of this application ways to remove that waste disposal and put it in a more appropriate location. And so what we did is we moved the waste disposal to the area towards the rear, which is that area identified with a red circle. And the garbage is proposed to be enclosed by a 6-foot-high retaining wall, and on top of that, there's going to be some planting shrubs to kind of shield any additional view that residents may have. And so the implications of this is really that the truck traffic that was intended to access through Seton Drive will no longer occur. Everything will be shifted to the rear of the building, and so trucks will enter off of Murray Drive, access the waste disposal area and loading area at the back of the building, be able to turn around and exit onto Murray Drive. And I should note that the truck deliveries for this property are really limited to about 4 movements per week for food and garbage. Landscaping, we did make some minor changes to the landscape drawing, and they primarily relate to some addition of tree planting along the proposed Seton driveway, and just to act as an interface between the existing residents and that driveway. Fencing was an item that we actually heard from the community about, and as part of the site plan application, we did propose fencing around the perimeter of the property. By and large, it was a chain link fence, with the exception of the area just behind the existing residence. We proposed a board-on-board fence there just for some additional privacy. We did hear from some of the community that they actually would prefer a chain link fence so that they can maintain their view into that landscaped open space. And so we did accommodate that change for those residents who have asked. And lastly, another change that had happened is that we have added a gate into the proposed chain link fence. We had heard from the community that some of them have been using the property as a quasi pathway to walking their dogs, interacting with the residents of the community to get over to the park space and the school and behind. And we wanted to continue to foster that relationship, and so we've included a gate in that location as well. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll be able to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you very much. Could I have a motion to receive? Councillor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Are there any questions to the delegate? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for making those changes. Could you go over the change again that is going to be happening, the improvement actually that you've made for the first house that borders the driveway, that borders the new driveway from Seton? Are you increasing the buffer space there?
So we did increase the buffer space. I think it's gone from 1.2 meters to 1.5 meters. We've pulled the driveway further away as much as possible, and we've added in a row of trees to act as a potential barrier between the driveway and that residence property.
And would these potentially be evergreen trees so that they could act as a buffer all year round?
Give me a second, I can check the species.
Or perhaps I could make that as a statement?
Yeah.
Good evening, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm Todd Cullen of Fieldgate Properties, and I have the benefit of some of the greater detail on those types of issues. There, the suggestion beyond on our property line, the additional trees, the suggestion in the 1.5 meter strip is that deciduous trees versus coniferous with the higher sort of bloom might in fact survive better. The evergreens and growing with some girth between the fence and the driveway may not be that viable, and so that was the thinking behind going with more of a coniferous tree row there.
Thank you. And there are some coniferous trees that do keep their leaves for most of the winter. So I'm sure you'll choose carefully for, it's going to be quite a change for our residents.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, we will absolutely. And just as a note, along that side, the actual visual of the existing residence, in this instance, with the addition of the trees, I think the screening there will be enhanced to the existing condition versus anything to do with the new, but we're pleased to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And last question is on the shadowing study. I'm assuming that this is actually what's going to happen?
That's correct,
The
yes.
study we've been presented with and how the shadowing is going to affect the residents is the way it's going to be.
It was prepared by the architect who have software that they use to prepare those shadow shading drawings, and they're quite accurate.
Thank
yes.
you.
Other questions? If I might, the lighting on the laneway off of Seton that comes down for the parking spaces, if there's lighting there, could it shield, be sort of like directed down as opposed to bright so it affects the homes?
Typically, all lighting is proposed to be downward-facing lighting. We'll take that into consideration and ensure that that is, in fact, the case.
Thank you very much. There are no further questions or comments. I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Madam Clerk. So that's the delegate. We'll be dealing with that item. I think it's item 1, so it'll be the first one. Madam Clerk, I'm looking at the agenda. Presentations of the advisory committees. Seeing none. We'll move on to consideration of items requiring separate discussion. Item 1 is first, and I polled already, so I believe that's one we'll start with. Madam Clerk, who was that polled by? Mayor Dahl.
I'll move as is right now, Mr. Chair.
Could I have a seconder? Councillor Perry? Any comments to open with Mayor Dahl?
I'd be interested in hearing from Mr. Rumuno with respect to any conversations he's had either with the developer and or the residents.
Mr. Rumuno, is there any further comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've had discussions, obviously, with the developer, and we're aware of the changes that they made in response to their meeting with the residents, and we have heard from a couple of local residents. And one in particular, we did receive an email this afternoon. I believe all of council has it, and a particular resident is still not supportive of the site plan application, but the report I provided for council this evening is really additional information based on the changes that Lauren just mentioned, and my recommendation to approve the site plan. Again, we're back this evening because the Committee of Adjustment just this past Thursday dealt with and approved the 3 variances that were sought to facilitate the development.
Thank you, Mr. Rumuno. Mayor Dahl, that's it. Anyone else? Councillor Gardner?
You know, I don't know how this happened, but as it is, it fits in with our OP, our zoning bylaws. It's allowed to be this way. And I don't know in whose wisdom this area was zoned this way, but as a council, our hands are tied. And I am thankful that for some of the changes that the developer has made. And that's all I can say on this. Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming again tonight.
Thank you, Councillor. If there are no further comments or questions, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Madam Clerk. So that is that item dealt with. Thank you, everyone. You're welcome to stay. It gets more exciting, perhaps. Madam Clerk, we'll go to item 3, and that was pulled by Councillor Thompson. I'm relying on you. Councillor Thompson, item 3.
I'll move the recommendation.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Perry? Councillor Thompson, would you care for opening remarks?
I would. Within the report, within the analysis, it talks about consulting with the Ottawa staff to learn more from their experience and success failure with the winter parking problems. Through you to either our CEO, Mr. Nadarozny, or Ms. Van Leeuwen, have we had conversations with the City of Ottawa already with regards to their experience, the issues, the challenges, the pros, the cons? And if so, when did we have those conversations?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do know that our Manager of Bylaw Services reached out today and had conversations with the City of Ottawa to get some information on their experience with the program. Some of the comments, if you would just bear with me for a second. Some of the comments from Ottawa is that they provide 24-hour a day, 7 days a week staffing. That they have temporary no parking signage for the purposes of snow removal, so they place these temporary signs out in the event of a snow event. They have plainclothes parking officers that ride with the tow truck drivers to ticket before towing. And the snow removal during the day is easier because they have a 3-hour restriction to daytime parking. So those are some of the comments that we received from the City of Ottawa today.
And my follow-up question then, if council approved this back in May, and this report was approved recently, why wouldn't those comments be part of this report? Why would it say that we're going out to consult with them now and not have done it in the lead up to this part? As a councillor, I mean, I can only, make judgments based on the information provided. I would have thought that since part of the rationale to move forward with this is that we wanted to mirror some of the other successes other municipalities had, why wasn't this information provided to us?
Ms. Van Leeuwen, would you care?
I can't really speak to the comment that's in the report around the consultation process. I know that Mandy Crawford, Manager of Bylaw Services, did have an initial conversation with Ottawa some time ago, whether or not it was before or after the motion came forward and was approved. I agree that that information should have been part of this analysis and provided in the report. My apologies.
I appreciate that. I guess, so further down that page, it talks about, that one of the consequences could be compromising safety. And so, that paragraph jumps out at me and concerns me. And so I guess I would have liked to have more information about those programs, at least to be able to feel comfortable making that decision. And so I guess I'll leave that comment with our CIO.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson, and I will share at the end, but I did talk to who prepared the report, Jamel Nasadeh, and I can offer some information on that. I did follow up as well, contacting Michael Ouimet of Ottawa Operations on that very same comment, because it jumped out at me as well.
Could we know that before we begin our discussions,
Sure,
Mr.
I mean,
Chair?
I usually as a chair would wrap up at the end, but I don't mind going ahead if there are no further questions.
Well, just with respect to the issues that we might be dealing with, including safety.
Well, so I talked to Jamel, and he said that in the event that we do not have parking restrictions, in the evening, people would go to sleep and not be making plans like they normally would and put their car away. They may leave it on the road, and so that when crews were going to plow in the evening, The safety issue was is that they would have to move around the cars. And so that's what I wanted to ask Ottawa about and see how their operations deal with it. But I think Ms. Van Leeuwen spoke to it. They have surveillance, they have a crew automatically on, and it sounds like they move quite quickly. So that was the safety issue. Jamel also said that because it's a trial basis, we will take figures and we'll be able to document it in our case, which is not a big city, but more of a town. I do recall talking to Mr. Simonauskas last year. Snowplow operations do not normally take place in the evening because normal operations occur for snow removal in the day. If there is snow being removed in the evenings, it's usually on the arterial roads and not on the secondary roads, which would naturally fall back into the day. So that's not a safety issue unless you're on Wellington and you're parking overnight and the plow has to go around you. So anyways, at any rate, Jamel said that it's a pilot, so he will be addressing and bringing those stats forward at the end of the year to say this is what we found out about it. But his potential concern was exactly that. And I haven't got back from Mr. Ouimet from Ottawa, but I hope for council next week I'll be able to update you on that. Councilor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one comment. I kind of agree. I think that, this motion has been a long time, and do I agree with it and want to move forward with it? Definitely, and I think it's a good idea to try out as a pilot, but it's been a long time, and I think it would have been important for, I would have liked to have seen some of that data also. I think it would have been easy to get some of that data from Ottawa on, how many damaged vehicles do they have on a yearly basis? How many problems do they have with the windrow? And we could have had that in front of us just to kind of get a sense of how it works within Ottawa, and just to make us feel a little bit more comfortable, as Councillor Thompson said, on making that decision on moving forward. While I'd like to move forward, it would have been great to have that data, and I think there was more than enough time to get that now. So I don't know what happened and why we don't have it, but I guess we'll have our own data afterwards.
We will, and also I did ask for snowfall history, how many snowfalls we get a year, to give an idea. Like last year, we didn't have a snowfall until Christmas. So we were ticketing overnight and there was no snow on the ground, which was the whole impetus of doing it. This year they're predicting a heavier snowfall, but that's a prediction. So anyways, if we had a history going forward, I think it would be, the stats on that would also be useful, Mr. CAO.
Can I just follow up?
Councilor Marcus, go ahead.
And then also, it states in the report about, that there's a potential to lose $75,000 to $85,000 in revenue, and that's another stat that I'd like to see, that we could have seen possibly from another municipality that does this, such as Ottawa's, is how much revenue do they lose? Does it get made up because of the fact that some people actually don't put in their vehicle during an actual snow event, and then they're still ticketed, so therefore maybe that revenue loss isn't as big as anticipated. So some of those things would have been very useful, I think.
Well, exactly. They're going to be ticketing cars that don't move into snowfall, so there's that to compound. And through you, Ms. Van Leeuwen, is it a $50 fine for the parking?
To you, Mr. Chair, I'm not certain what the amount of the ticket is. Typically, yeah, I'm not certain. I don't want to speak off the top of my head, because the ticket, the violation would be interference with snow removal, which we don't typically issue those types of tickets. So we do have the authority to issue those tickets, but it's typically a ticket, if we ticket overnight, it said no parking during a prohibited time.
So, Ms. Van Leeuwen, if it was $50, I'm just thinking that would work out to some 1,500 tickets at $50 would be $75,000, which would be translating about $200 a month, 8 a night. So it just sort of gives you sort of a ballpark. That's just rough math on my part. I do know that when on November 15th last year, we did over 50 tickets on the first night. So it was a blitz. Are there other questions? I've got Councillor Tom and Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have a question with respect to communication. So I had a couple of people call me. The town's website isn't updated, obviously, because it's not implemented at this time, but, you know, we're coming up to November pretty quickly, and so I just thought, you know, it says that we're going to develop a communication plan, but I just want to know how quickly is that going to get up and running, when's the website going to change, and how are we going to really communicate with residents on the changes?
I'll ask Ms. Van, oh no,
Or Ms.
Ms.
Mackenzie
Mackenzie Smith. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we do actually have a communication strategy which is attached. And we are ready to go as soon as it is actually approved by council. We're ready to go ahead and update those pages on the website and get started with all of that.
I do believe it was approved, but we're receiving this.
Yes.
Okay, but
Yeah.
as soon as we receive it, okay.
As soon as
thank
you receive it, we're ready to go.
So that's when it goes in, when this is received, okay? And then the other thing I would say is that we currently have cars that are parked all day, right? I mean, under the previous regime, that the plows would have to go around, right? Because you don't get ticketed during the day for parking your car on the street. And if most of our plowing currently takes place during the day, then cars are already going around. So maybe we have data already on, and maybe it's a nighttime thing, I'm not sure. So just so people are aware, I mean, that does happen already. So anyways, just thought I'd throw that comment in.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Normally, with a program such as this, there's usually a set of conditions or thresholds that, if they are met, you know, you cancel the program. Has that been considered in terms of if for some reason we have, I know there's a listing of some of those conditions, but for other reasons in terms of, let's say, customer complaints, the number of snow events, if there's a certain quantity of these events or conditions that are met and that pass the threshold, do we have a drawing line or where we will cancel the program?
Who would like to answer that? Mr. Simonauskas?
Through Mr. Chair, I can start, and if there's more comment. So we've allowed for a cancellation option to allow for any eventualities that might either result in public safety or access concerns or just non-workability of the program. You know, some of the things that we've considered are if we have excessive snow accumulations resulting in difficulty of managing the snow on the roads, if there's a large volume of complaints, and to actually put thresholds to it is something we discussed, but it's difficult to do, and really it was more a consideration of, you know, is the program moving to a non-workable state, in which case we pull the plug, or can we actually, you know, respond to the issues, modify our responses to allow for a more efficient operation, and, you know, make the program work throughout the year. So really, I think it's going to be more of a feedback loop to see what happens. The first snow event is going to be telling to determine how many people actually are aware of the program. I know the first step in communication is to actually put like a flyer within vehicle windshields that are non-compliant, so that they are, you know, made aware of the program. A real soft approach to communicating the need to be off of the road. And if we're seeing that there's no change after 3 or 4 snow events in certain areas, then I believe Ms. Van Leeuwen's staff are more than willing to then up the enforcement. But really, we're trying to take a soft educational awareness approach to doing it. And depending on how the winter unfolds, and if we have time between snow events to do the cleanup that we need to do, then that'll help us. You know, if we have a series of very intense events, we may have to call for a longer period of suspended vehicle parking to allow for us to clean up. So it'll be, you know, see how it goes, basically.
Councillor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I find that any program where it's kind of trial and error, see how it goes, a lot of times there's a lot of unforeseen events that you can't potentially foresee, and I find that it's usually wise to have set thresholds and criteria so that it's easier to kind of check off or look at the grid and say, well, we've reached these conditions, and so we need to put on the yellow light or red light or just cancel the program. I would advise, or I'd recommend that we have those prerequisites in place so that we don't have to just do trial and error. In some conditions that might be warranted. I don't think this would be one of them, but And if we do have these prerequisites in place, I'd advise that we would have a mean average of perhaps the last 3 years or last 5 years, of whether it be metrics like customer service calls or complaints or snowfall events. They have to be averaged over several years as opposed to the last one, because last year was an anomaly, and perhaps the year before that was as well. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We could always call in the Queen York Rangers if things get out of hand. Mayor Tom?
As long as it's not Mayor Mel.
It's Mayor last minute.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to either the CAO or the Treasurer, and if I missed it, I apologize, but so that with the potential impact of the budget of between $75,000 and $85,000 in terms of income, is that something that's going to, that needs to be taken into account as we look at our operating budget at this point? Is there, how does that get absorbed? That's my first question, sir.
I see Mr. Elliott's ready and poised.
That will be discussed during the operating budget, and staff are well aware of that adjustment that we're making.
Thank you, and I apologize if I missed that. And then my other point is that in the law of unintended consequences, the Toys for Tickets program was extremely successful last year. So for the first month, if you got a parking ticket, you could bring in a toy and we would waive the ticket. So I think, there's some impact around that I don't think ever, well, unless Ms. Van Leeuwen has a comment, excuse me.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we intend to continue with the Toys for Tickets for all tickets issued in the month of December. So we do issue other parking tickets during the daytime for other violations, and we intend to go forward with the Toys for Tickets again this year.
Perfect. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Simonauskas, just to confirm, we're not anticipating any alterations to our KPIs. We'll be able to meet all of our you're expecting that this won't impact our KPIs for snow removal?
Mr. Simonauskas.
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair. No, I don't. We have our thresholds for initiating an event, whether it's snow or ice or any other unsafe conditions. We still are intending to meet the minimum maintenance standard requirements. That's a huge liability for us, and that would be one major factor in considering cancellation of the program. However, assessing what's been happening in the past with regards to our current policies for parking and the changes that we're proposing here alongside the communication plan and the increased awareness for both staff and the community, we're anticipating that barring a reasonably normal winter, that this should be a fairly easy program to administer.
Thank you. And we're looking currently at suspending the program during only snow events. And I think that covers off 85% of the situations where our trucks are important. What happens if there's a quick thaw and then a refreeze? It's not a snow event, so I'm just wondering, are precautions going to be put in place, or are we going to have residents come to us later on down the road when they've parked overnight and say, well, it didn't snow? So just a question, around that.
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair. The main issue with this program is the ability to remove the snow from the roads. As far as icing or any thaws and freezes, staff are confident that parked vehicles are not a hazard from that perspective. We generally do center bear ice clearing, so that shouldn't be an issue at all. Again, if there are any issues where certain areas are either wider or more heavily impacted by ice, then we always have that option to go back for a second application and can work with vehicles that are parked through that process.
And I guess my last question through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen, our regular staff complement will be able to see us through on the nights when there are snowstorms. We're not going to have to bring in additional bylaw officers. Or do we anticipate that it's or do we anticipate bringing in more? Do we anticipate it being the standard procedure?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are planning to manage with our existing complement. We are shifting their work hours from an overnight to an early start in the morning, and we plan to work very closely with the roads division in the coordination of our efforts.
So
Councillor?
that means that we don't have to bring in additional staff to accommodate this program. That's what I took it to mean, so thank you.
Councillor, is there anyone else? Councillor Thompson, I had you. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just I wanted to be clear on the management of the program. Certainly if it's a mild winter, I mean, it's pretty understandable how it'll be administered. But, you know, Mr. Simonovskis touched on the fact that there may be, you know, some event, or maybe it's a worse winter than we're anticipating. And if a situation comes up where safety is compromised or whatever, I just want to know who makes the call to cancel the program. Perhaps best directed to Mr. CAO Doug Naderosny.
Mr. CAO?
To you, Mr. Chair, I would imagine that would come back to council before we would take that kind of an action. So it would ultimately be council's decision, but we would put forward the logic why we're recommending it.
And that's why I bring it up. I mean, we have one meeting in December, we have one meeting in January, and so if there are legitimate concerns, if there are legitimate issues or safety issues, I'd be more comfortable with you know, leaving that responsibility in your hands to make that call. I mean, obviously it is the direction of council, but again, you know, I don't want to wait 2-3 weeks or have to call an emergency meeting to deal with that issue. I think that staff, and specifically yourself, are, you know, capable enough to make that call. You understand council's wish, but that would be my preference. And I just wanted to be clear on how this program is administered so that there are no issues after the fact.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen, I'm not sure if it is you. With respects to perhaps the text messaging alerts, there's going to be a cost involved with this. Do we have any idea when we're going to know what that cost is?
I see Ms. Mackenzie Smith is
Sorry,
ready
Ms.
to
Mackenzie
answer that.
Smith.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. We are hoping to have, most likely going to have to actually go, we might have to go to an informal tender process, as we're looking at kind of the text message alerts as a broader communication strategy as a whole for various different programs that residents may be looking to sign up to receive alerts from the town. So in that case, we may be looking at putting out, going through the procurement process. So that can happen fairly quickly. I've been told that we could get it out within several days, and then it would be posted for 7 days, and then we would be able to move forward at that point.
Thank you. And the communication strategy looks to be very complete. I believe I voted for this in the past, and I remember sitting here discussing an email I got from a resident who got a ticket because they didn't uphold the winter restrictions. But I have to say, in 12 winters that I've been here, I've had very few complaints from residents. And I'm having misgivings about this because it seems to me that it's going to be very confusing for the residents. Anyway, I'll make my decision next week, but the bloom is off the rose for me with this. I can see so many problems.
Are there any further comments? I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item 4, and that was pulled by Councillor Kim. Would you move that?
Yes, I'd like to move this as is, please.
Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Gardner? You have the floor, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to bring this forward and just to kind of ensure that everyone's on the same page. I know earlier in the summer when there was, in our Finance Advisory Committee, there was a number put out there, and someone misinterpreted that as our total deficit, but but it was misinterpreted as without taking into account the revenue portion of our ledger. And so we have a deficit of 185,000. I don't want that to be like the headline of anything, because that will be right-sized by the end of the fiscal year. Earlier this year, the FAC, we set out some guiding principles for our budget, and one of those was that we would not include supplementary revenue into our budgeting. And this is just as much of a behavioral change for staff as it is a fiscal one. And with any changes, there's a transition period, and it's not going to work perfectly. But I dare say that this year the budgeting from staff has been relatively good. In researching other municipalities, most of them use excess supplementary revenues as part of their budget, and indeed we've been doing that up until now, and we're getting ahead of the curve so that we are fiscally more conservative, and as a result, I think our budget situation in Aurora now and in future years are in good shape. So I just wanted to just make that clear and just bring that forward, and that everyone around the table, as well as anyone reading the agenda, is on the same page. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. You're on the Finance Committee, so it's nice to have a bit of insight there. I'll go to Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, will we right-size the budget by the end? Because the report says we'll end the year with a deficit of 185. So let's be clear.
Mr. Elliott.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the budget appears to be headed towards a deficit of 185. Through the year-end surplus control process, it will be taken to zero. But what we're seeing is that the budget is being right-sized in the 2017 process. And so there are a number of budgets that are underfunded, not overspent. If we need to understand those nuances of those two phrases. They're being underfunded to achieve what we need to do. We actually are spending quite a bit more, and they've been that way over time, and so we're adjusting those in the 2017 budget. That adjustment is quite sizable, and it's the 185 is quite a bit less than the adjustment that we're seeing in 2017. And so on a $58 million budget, missing the mark by a net of $185,000 is, in my mind, pretty astounding, considering that we've already identified 6 or 7 line items that are substantially underfunded. And so we're spending those, whether it's snow clearing or facilities maintenance or part-time staff. We have to spend those, but staff around this table have been working hard to constrain the budget to minimize the amount of this deficit, and will continue to do so to the year end.
Thank you. Follow-up. So you mentioned that through the year-end control process, I think you said that it would be, I guess, balanced. Can you explain that a little further through you?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. The Municipal Act requires that any surplus of a fiscal year goes forward into the next year to reduce the tax requirement. And so it pushes down the tax rate in the following year. It also requires any deficit to carry forward and push up the tax rate. And this behavior, if you follow the Municipal Act to the verbiage, your tax rates become highly volatile based on overspending or underspending, and circumstances happen during a year to budgets. What many municipalities do, including ourselves, is we pass a surplus control bylaw that says if at the end of the year there's a surplus, or if there's a deficit, fund it or take it to reserves so that it does not affect the following year's budget and the tax rates. So then that way the year-end results are separate from the budget, because here we are, we're hoping to approve a budget before the end of the year. Technically, under the Municipal Act, if we had this deficit, we would have to reopen the budget in April and adjust the tax rates and have a higher tax rate than we would otherwise expect if we approve a budget before Christmas. I'm hoping I'm being clear there. I'm trying to keep the results of one year in the year and not have it affect the following year's budget or actuals.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. And I do follow you, but I don't know if everybody does. But, you know, I think that, you know, if the headline in the paper this week is town's running a deficit of $160,000, and then we had a deficit when the last report came to us, you know, I think as a resident, I'd want to know what actions have we been taking to minimize our spending or to, you know, deal with this deficit to reduce it, and not just what actions have we taken, but what actions are we going to continue to take? Because I'm sure everybody around this table, you know, recognizes that we have a fiduciary responsibility and we take it very seriously. And the word deficit concerns us all. And so, you know, I want to be able to say to a resident, yeah, this is why, but this is also the steps we are taking. So either yourself or perhaps the CAO can speak to the actions we've taken since this first came up and the actions we will continue to take.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll ask our CAO to comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, this report follows up the one that we produced, I believe, in August, and it shows a little bit of movement, not as much as we'd like, to a little better result than we were projecting it in August. It's been an active conversation at the executive leadership team in terms of trying to bring that to zero. There's a number of things that we've been employing and will employ throughout the remainder of the year to further reduce that 185 number. We've delayed some hiring of some vacancies to create a little bit more gap. Even though there's already a budgeted amount for gap, we're hopefully going to exceed that temporarily as a reaction to the situation we're in now. There have been some small adjustments. I don't want to call them, you know, major dollar values, but there's some small adjustments to service levels in things that wouldn't impact the residents, like some of our building cleaning and so on, where we can do a little more with staff and maybe just save a few dollars there. We've also made some scheduling adjustments to better optimize our full-time employees, thereby allowing us an opportunity to reduce some of our part-time hours. Again, these are small because we don't want them to impact the service we're delivering at the end of the day. There's been some identified savings in the parks maintenance area, and we are also optimistic before year end about some revenue areas in recreation services that could see us achieve better than what we're projecting right now. So all in all, we maintain confident that we will further reduce that number, and we're aiming for zero.
Thank you. And is it the plan of staff to bring forth a further report before year end so that we could continue to see an improvement in our position, or will we not see another interim budget until after the year end or after 2016?
Mr. Elliott?
Currently, we're not scheduled to bring forward a report until our year-end report card, which is post-audit. At this point, this is the best information that we have prior to year-end, prior to budget. The intention was to get this on the table prior to budget, and it does take quite a bit of work to put together. And so all of our groups, not just my staff, but those in other areas now are focused on getting us through the 2017 budget and into year end. So no, there is not an intended additional report between now and Christmas.
I understand the amount of work that goes into it, but I would, I guess, request that staff give some consideration to bringing us one on December 15th, which would be our final, whatever our final budget meeting, or final council meeting is in December. So I would think that based on the way we report, that would at least give us some insight to the end of October, because it seems like we're usually 6 weeks behind. So whatever the date of our last December meetings, I'll leave that with our CIO.
Very good. Could I ask a question? This budget deficit, can we put that into a percentage, Mr. Elliott?
as a percentage of the total expenditures, now there's revenue implications and there's expenditure, but $58 million of expenses in the budget is 185,000 as just about 0.3 of 1%.
So 0.03 of a percent. 0.3 of a percent. So that's a margin. Okay, thank you. Any other, I've got Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've spoken more than once at this table about using supplementary taxes to balance budgets. And my understanding is that supplementary taxes are supposed to be used to service new residents. So I'm very glad to see that we're going in this direction. My comment is, though, about the deficit. I hope that we're not going to delay spending in the 2016 year and push it on to the 2017 year, which is going to give some issues in 2017. And that could be anything from purchasing to, well, I won't comment on the staff delays, but you know, you put all of these small things together and you get a pretty big amount. But certainly when it comes to purchasing anything that is in this budget that we should be purchasing in 2016 because the staff needs it, I hope that won't be delayed till 2017.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other questions, comments? Councillor Perry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've just looked at a motion where we're foregoing revenue by not collecting we're not collecting fines for cars parked overnight during the winter, during a time when we're looking at a deficit and ways that we might be able to fix the deficit. I'm not sure if it would be wise to reconsider if this is the right time for that pilot project. I guess my question through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Van Leeuwen, I know that there's a $75,000 deficit. If we were to cancel that program, how much revenue would you anticipate the town being able to bring in for the remainder of 2016?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, for the remainder of 2016, so the overnight parking restrictions start November 15th. So, and if we didn't have a Toys for Tickets program, likely around $8,000 to $10,000. But if we implement the Toys for Tickets, the toys offset the revenue. So it depends on the participation in that program as well.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Van Leeuwen, is there any increase in parking tickets due to the, what I call the Town Park Go Station? Are we not getting revenues there? Since we started, that's a new ticketing revenue.
To you, Mr. Chair. I'm not certain what the revenue impact is, as we have just recently installed the signs within the last several weeks. And so the revenue generation, we haven't seen a full month of revenue generation yet from that program, so I'm not certain.
But there is revenue there?
Yes.
Thank you, that's just, so take from one, give to the other, that's my point. Councillor Maracas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see your point, Councillor Perry, but in essence, a parking ticket is kind of a tax. So if you're going to do that, you might as well just add to the tax rate. It's the same. The residents are going to be paying for it one way or the other. So, you know, we're trying to give them a service so that they don't have to get that ticket. So, but I appreciate your point.
Are there any other questions, comments? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. One last one, and I know the amount as a percentage of the whole is you know viewed as 1/3%, but it's the principle for me. It's the principle associated with the deficit. So, if Council will just bear with me, through you to Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, you know, one of the things that we do is we make a sizable cash to capital contribution. In 2016, it'll be $4.6 million. And that money is really to build up our reserves, to deal with our, infrastructure, our repair replacements, our whole 10-year capital plan. But, there's been many times in the past 10 years that we've had a surplus, and those surpluses have been sizable, anywhere from up to $1 million over the past 10 years. And I guess, in my perspective, in some ways they were unaccounted for contributions to our reserves. And so I guess as we get closer to the end of the year and we look at our status, will one of the strategies we look at be reducing that cash to capital to offset the deficit? And the reason why I say that is, for myself, in my own personal life, at the end of the year, you look at your RSP contribution and say, well, maybe I'll top it up a little bit. But if you don't have any money in the bank or you have other bills to pay, then you say, well, I can't do that. And so, if we're $100,000 short, then it's one of the strategies to look at and consider. And I mean, there are implications, and I know that it compounds going forward. But I just want to know whether or not that's one of the things we would look at as a way to mitigate the issue. Through you to Mr. Elliott.
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have looked at that, and we can continue to have discussions at the staff level about that, but in the past, when we've had surplus years, we've also been working on building our tax rate stabilization reserve, knowing that occasionally we may have to draw on it to cover a year-end deficit. And so we've sort of, again, it's similar principles. We're putting away savings in different places. Where do we draw it from? Either way, we end up at the end of the year, it will be a balanced budget, so that it doesn't affect the future years.
Thank you.
Mayor Dahl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not sure if this is a question or a comment, but along that line, a deficit of $185,200, and we have a surplus from utility operations of $815,700. So there's a positive differential of $630,500. And if we take the concept that, Councilor Marcus's point, that parking tickets are essentially another source of revenue from the taxpayers, is that another option, Mr. Elliott, to be looking at an offset from the utilities, as opposed to taking it from reserves? And I certainly agree with the point, and been very supportive, of not counting on supplemental. So I'm just, I'm throwing that out there. Is that another option?
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, it's going to sound like I have all the answers, but through you, Mr. Chair, the provincial legislation is trying to move the utilities to full cost recovery, and more municipalities are really working hard on segregating user rate funded or rate funded assets, rate funded reserves, and tax funded assets and tax funded reserves. And there's even now building services, fees and reserves and operating costs. So we're segregating and segmenting our funding, and it's to, in an attempt, believe it or not, to increase accountability and transparency. So I think the idea of taking funding from one to the other, to do it in the accounting books is easy. Is it against the law? No. Is it against fundamental principles? I believe it is.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott, because I agree with you. I think part of the point that we have to recognize as council is that, and Mr. Netarozny spoke to this, is that we're looking at changing how we do our budgeting. We're looking at to use the term right sizing, and that has an impact. And it's, to use a horrible phrase, it's short-term pain for long-term gain. So I think we have to look at it that way. I certainly appreciate the point. No one wants to see the D word. Sometimes that will pop up as you change some of your accounting principles. So I think council needs to take all those factors into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Dow. I'll go with Councillor Gardner and then Councillor Marcus.
I think there's a couple of things that we have to keep in mind. The first thing is that there were many years, there was 9 years of a 0% tax increase that compromised our reserves. We're now in a position where we have to build our reserves up. We really don't have a choice. And the second thing is, going into the 2011 budget, there was a surplus of $1.2 million. A lot of that was supplementary taxes. It just went into the general budget. We absolutely have to stop doing that. And what we're doing here is, as Mayor Dawes says, it's a correction, and we just have to bite the bullet. And I think that Mr. Elliott has kind of alluded to that. If we want to be in healthy shape by the time town is at build-out, and subsequently, we just have to do this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Marakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, none of us want to be in a deficit, obviously, but I think that we can all trust that Mr. Elliott and the rest of the staff is going to get us to that zero mark as he stated. But the one thing that I really like to hear, and what I'm hearing, is that staff have been working at finding efficiencies within, what we have in our budget, and they're looking at lowering certain aspects to get us closer to that zero. So while we can take from here and bring it over there, and that would make it easy, staff are actually doing a lot of that hard work and finding smaller things that, it might not bring it down right to zero, and we might need to take it from somewhere else, but these are the things that they're working hard that we've been asking for since beginning of my term, or this term, and we've been saying, listen, we need to find those efficiencies, and staff are doing it. And so, as has been stated, it's some small pains, but we're going to have big gains at the end of the day, because we're going to have a budget that's a budget that's efficient and very smooth, and we're going to be able to come up with, as we've been doing it since last year, is coming up with a number sooner and having everything done in time and having it set, and I think everyone wins at the end of the day, and we'll be a very efficient, lean, mean running machine.
Councillor Tom.
Thanks. I just have a brief question. Councillor Marakis kind of touched on it. Doug, you mentioned earlier when you were speaking about this that the goal is to get this number to zero before the year end. But I don't know if you could just be a bit more frank with council about what number do you think we're realistically going to get to? I know zero is the goal, but do you think we'll get to zero, or do you have any more insight on that as well?
Mr. Nadarozny.
Through you, Mr. Chair, nobody likes making these kinds of predictions.
Right.
If everything else that is supposed to occur from today on happened without any variance, in other words, we were just dealing with the situation that's represented in this report and a couple of things that I've commented on, then I'm confident we could be very close to zero. But the reality is that there's 2 months, 2.5 months left. Actually, from this report, there's 3.5 months left of operating things that are also changing, and not the least of which is the onset of winter. So there's a few variables in there that don't allow me to say I'm very confident that at the end of the year you'll be at zero.
And I appreciate that. I don't mean to tie your hands or staff's hands. I just thought, you mentioned that we might get to zero, we might not. I just want perhaps more clarity just for the public's sake. Thank you.
One quick question. If it's a term supplemental revenues or surplus, is that from new residents coming in and part way through the year and then starting to put their tax bill in?
To you, Mr. Chair, pretty much. I tried to speak to, in this report, what the subs really are.
What page is that?
At the top of page 2 of 12.
Thank you.
Supplementary revenues are taxes which are assessed for part of the current or prior year, but were not included in the assessment roll at the beginning of the current year. And so a new house is erected, they move in April, they pay tax from April forward. That's a supplementary tax bill. That may not happen until mid-year next year as well. So subs come in mid-year, we don't have any sense of what they are. We have to really budget based on our experience, based on number of building permits issued and so on, because until the assessment is made by MPAC, we don't know what those values are.
Fine. And I understand that, and it's hard to say when you do a budget, oh, we should anticipate that so we can do our tax increase based on that. So we're dealing on a reality, and the reality is we're going to stop growing. And so we have to prepare for that, so we can't rely on it. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions, Councillor Kim?
Yeah, just one last comment. A lot of this revolves around supplementary revenues, and let's keep in mind that supplementary revenues come from new lots or new residents who come online mid-year, and so they're using our services. It was not budgeted for, but they're still using the services, and we are trying to put them into the reserve and not use them. And by principle, we do want to ensure that we are within our budget and we don't go into a deficit. But as I said before, this is a transition year, and in transition years, you're going to suffer through or benefit from the behavioral changes fiscally and humanly. And I think if you're at within 100,000 by the end of the year, I'd say that's pretty good based on a budget of 60 some odd million. That would mean that any household income of 100,000, if you're within $500 or $400, I'd say that's pretty good. So I don't want to be too hard on staff in this transitional year, and I'm glad that we have 9 competent people keeping staff and everyone else accountable as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, we're going to item 6, and that was pulled by Councillor Kim as well. Councillor Kim, would you care to move the motion?
Yes, I'd like to move it as is, please.
Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Gardner. Councillor Kim, we'll allow you on the floor.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was extremely pleased to read this report about having electronic procurement. I think it's a long time coming, and considering all the other municipalities who's already on e-procurement system, I think this is a welcome report. I had a few questions. Normally, before any organization moves forward into a drastic change, especially when you're digitizing the procurement process, you go through a full due diligence in terms of the end-to-end processes. What I failed to see on the report was the actual amount or unit of savings. I did read words such as efficiencies and things of that nature, but no hard payback period. Maybe that's because the cost to us evidently is zero, and so maybe that's why there's no payback period, because we haven't paid anything into it. But one of my questions is this going to be an end-to-end process where you have bidders bidding on the interface, the service, and the delivery of the service, the payment, that's all going to be matched up from the system? Or is this just going to be a stage 1 of a potentially full procurement process where it's really just matching up, giving us more transparency in the bidding process as opposed to the full end-to-end process? So if we can work on that question first, please.
Mr. Elliott.
Thank you. This is an excellent question. This initiative is not intended to go beyond the issuance of purchase order and contracts to start the work. So once the order has been confirmed with the successful bidder, this process ends. However, as you said, the end-to-end process, cradle to grave on the procurement process, is currently under review. In fact, we had an extensive meeting this afternoon talking about a work plan to accomplish exactly that. This is a step that has come about and become available to us, and as an immediate step, we see some dramatic efficiencies in both the financial services area, but also our client departments, in speeding the process from the identification of the need to the acquisition of the good or service. And that is a significant concern of all of our client departments. And so moving to electronic process will speed us immediately. And so we're taking some baby steps. We're doing this incrementally, and our work plan is set out in phases at this point. And so this is just one step. And we want to take some small steps with council. We know that there have been some concerns with the procurement process. So in this bylaw amendment, we're simply enabling the use of e-bidding and e-procurement and not changing any role of council in the process. There's no change of thresholds where it has to come to council or anything like that. It's simply to enable the use of e-bidding in our bylaw. And this will make good strides in improving our process for our clients immediately. And then as we go forward through our review, we look for other processes. And we'll be coming back to council. My intent is to come back to council with some other bylaw amendments, probably in Q1, and then some additional amendments perhaps in Q2 of 2017. But this is just a first step, some low-hanging fruit that is available to us immediately, and to delay only adds to the frustration of our staff and our process.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott.
Yeah,
Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Elliott. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Elliott, then it's great that we're going to save some time. Still, I would like to have that quantified in terms of, who's doing the work currently. How much time is that going to be save, or how long is that going to take? And if you put the times that by the amount of dollars, then that can give us a better idea in terms of, we just talked about the budget in terms of what type of efficiencies with respect to the hard numbers. I think that's what we would like going forward when we move on to the next stage, or if it's not too late for this. So you made it clear that this is just the first stage, the interface portion of the bidding process, the whole procurement process. Down the road, when this becomes a full end-to-end process down the road, whether it be 2 years or 10 years down the road, will there be any issues because we've incorporated eSolutions as our vendor for this solution? If we want to use someone else down the road for stages 2, 3, and 4, are there any impacts in that regard?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I need to just clarify. This is an e-procurement solution only. There is no intent at this time for this platform to go any further in the procure-to-pay cycle or into project management elements of managing contracts with vendors. This process ends with the solicitation and the award of a solicitation. So it's the posting of a solicitation, receiving of documents, evaluation, selection, award, and all of the clerical work that needs to get done in that cycle. And that's the extent of this service. There's no vision for this particular software or platform to go beyond that at this time.
Yeah. So no, I understood that. So essentially what I'm asking is that because this software is just for that piece of the procurement process, if we wish to move forward in a different direction, there's no cost to us or any strain on us to remove this software or not use it, because this is remote, hosted via remote.
That's correct. This is completely hosted off-site. We just post our documents and receive bids. Vendors sign up with them. When a vendor signs up with them, they have access to not just our bids, but the bid opportunities of all agencies that are using the platform.
Great. And finally, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Elliott, if there's no cost to us, what is the benefit to the vendor to offer the service at no cost or payment?
Mr. Elliott?
The vendor's model is that they receive payment, the vendor of the software receives payment and compensation through the subscription of the vendors that are seeking bid opportunities on the system. So we're a posting agency, we pay no fee. The bidders who would like to do that, first they can browse them, they can view all of the detailed documents without paying a cent. They can then choose to buy a single bid opportunity, or they can buy a membership for the year. So a single bid, I believe, is $45, and a membership is about $150 or $165 for the year. And the membership gives them access to every bid that comes forward to them in the next 12 months through any of the agencies on the system. So to me, I think it's a terrific deal. Knowing that the internet age sort of came about in the mid-90s, became mainstream for business in 2000, I'd suggest that perhaps we're almost 15 years behind the ball on this.
Not us.
Thank you. And so I guess there's nothing stopping for vendors from adding their cost of fees to post online to whatever they're going to charge us. But overall, I'm in agreement. I'm supportive of the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Elliott, it'd be no different than Ticketmaster charging a convenience charge for the vendor to charge for an
I'm sorry?
The convenience of the vendor, the person applying for procure. The convenience is paid to the software, so they take the charge for that convenience.
To you, Mr. Chair, the vendor does not necessarily buy our documents. So right now they come, and if there's a great big roll of documents for the JOC, they have to buy those from us to bid. In this scenario, they're all electronic. They're loaded up website. They download them electronically. They pay the subscription fee to the web host on a per buy or on an annual basis, and that's the simple business model that there is.
I understand that. I was just trying to relay it to another business model, but I don't. Let's not get in there. Thank you.
If I could indulge, I have two images that I'd like to share with the committee, if I may.
Thank you very much, Mr. Elliott. Yeah, it was just a bad analogy. That's all.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I took this image last week. This is the closing of the bids for Mavernack Park development. All of those packages represent bids. There's pricing envelopes, there's all kinds of things, but we have to go through that pile of paper a number of times. With electronic bidding, we go to this, because that paper does not enter our office at all. It comes in electronically. They arrive in zipped file formats, and we can shoot it to our client with evaluation documentation already prepared. This is the kind of thing that I'm really looking forward to.
Very good, Mr. Elliott. I'll go to Councillor Maracas. I've got Councillor Gardner and Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just got a quick comment. While we do have issues, I believe, within our procurement bylaw, and we will be looking at those, that's a separate issue, but I do like this. I think that what this does is a lot of vendors nowadays won't even put in a paper bid. They won't do it, so they stay away from them. So this opens up an opportunity for us to get more bids for our projects, which will make it more competitive and possibly better pricing. And so once again, it's another win. So thank you for finally bringing us to the digital age. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gardner.
Well, this just makes sense. Although, from what you just said, Mr. Elliott, it seems like we're going to lose a little money on people coming and buying things from the town. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Elliott, would you like to comment?
I'd rather not handle the paper. Those small amounts of fees barely pay for themselves. So we're looking at that in the budget, but we're talking less than $10,000 kind of thing. This is what the vendors are looking for. It's what our clients are looking for, and it's important to note, though, we're going 100% electronic, so we will not be accepting paper bids in this process. So somebody asked me about that, and I said, well, if they're not using a computer to do their business today, perhaps they should reconsider being in business.
Thank you. There's no financial implication mentioned, but is there going to be a staff going to need to be trained in this process, and who's going to pay for that?
Mr. Elliott?
There's very little training involved. The e-procurement solutions are doing the training for us, for my staff in the procurement services group. We're the ones that are posting, we're the ones that are receiving and interacting with the system, and then we distribute the electronic bid documents to our clients. And in fact, the documents that the clients see will be the same ones that they developed for, like, they'll design the pricing page that they want prices put on, so they'll see exactly what they designed coming back to them.
Thank you. And the last time I've actually seen this document was, I think it was the spring of 2012 when we last looked at the procurement bylaws. So I think it's good for council to, I mean, there's a lot of stuff here, especially with respect to bids. Can you please explain what a pre-qualification is and the need for it?
Let's use a scenario. We're coming up for one. I'm not sure if we're going to use pre-qualification or not, but we're coming up for the potential construction of a new fire hall and headquarters. That's just being worked out. Let's use that as an example. We may pre-qualify the architects before selection. We'll say, send us your qualifications and demonstrate that you are qualified to do a fire hall. We're looking for 5 halls designed and built within the last 5 years. Give us the list and you'll be pre-qualified to bid to design our hall. So that's a pre-qualification.
So if somebody's pre-qualified, it doesn't give them an unfair advantage. It just gives us more information that we can use?
It assists us in ensuring that we're choosing to do business and we narrow the business opportunity to only those that we think should be bidding on this job. If you haven't done 5 fire halls in the last 5 years, for example, we're not interested in doing that, so we won't even be sending you the bid documents.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Serio, and we can set those parameters without getting into trouble? We can exclude people without getting into trouble?
Mr. Nadarozny, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we can. The pre-qualification is open to anyone to submit a bid, and then we get to judge their pre-qualifications. Another added benefit of this is we get some sense of the interest in the market. So rather than putting a tender out and getting one bid, we can make sure that we've got a good pool of people that have pre-qualified and interested in the work.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. I noticed we've been talking, some of us were talking about trying to perhaps find a way to give business to our local community. But it's very clear in the procurement bylaw that we can't do that. We can't even we can't even say we only want Canadian companies. And so I'm assuming there's nothing we can do about helping our local businesses when it comes to the procurement procedure.
Mr. Cieo?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you raise a good point. In fact, when we had the informal discussion about it, I wasn't even thinking of the free trade and things that have happened since then that probably make even any form of bid preference possibly in conflict with the free trade agreements that exist. But in a general sense, bid preferences for local bidders is a difficult thing to manage. It tends to create an unfair advantage and sometimes, in fact, artificially inflate the price when the local bidder knows that they're going to get a bid preference. So there's lots of philosophies on this. All levels of government have tried it at different times. So I'm not sure if it's completely, not allowed, but it's certainly not suggested.
Thank you. The only thing that really displeased me about this was seeing the contingencies. It's on page 33, and we're talking about contingencies. It says that the relevant department head may authorize the disbursement of additional funds for unknown conditions or circumstances. It's may. It's not a given that we have to put contingencies on all of our contracts, and yet we do now. I don't remember that always happening in the past. So it's a comment, unless Mr. Elliott or Mr. Seo wants to address that. I don't think it should be a given that every contract that we give out should have a contingency. I think it should depend on the kind of contract, et cetera.
Very good. Mr. Elliott, Mr. Natarosny, sorry, go ahead, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly we wouldn't apply contingencies automatically to all contracts. It should only be used in those situations where we think there is some variable or some possibility of an unknown expense coming up. And so if it's something like a fixed product where you're specifying exactly what you need, we generally wouldn't add a contingency for those kinds of goods.
Thank you.
I've got Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think one of the big things that we're not talking about, which is mentioned just briefly in the report, one of the major things that this type of software does is cut down on non-compliance. All the time, I think, every once in a while, we receive comments saying, my bid was disqualified, I can't believe this, how come this happens? One of the features, if the information isn't filled in correctly, the bid doesn't go through. So I think that's a really good point. My question to Mr. Elliott, I see this report written from our perspective, and I think it's great for the town of Aurora. But I am thinking about the bidders, and to hear your comment that if they're not using computers, then they shouldn't be doing business, it concerns me. For whatever reason, a lot of companies for a long time have been doing the paper bidding. Not all of them are computer savvy and computer literate. Will any training be offered from the town's perspective to help anyone who might need help?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is excellent, and you're absolutely right. My comment was not meant to be flippant, but rather put some context to it. Business is conducted by computer these days. There will be training to vendors through a webinar. There's scheduled live webinars, and we are working with the vendor now to get one of those webinars recorded so that it can be pulled on demand by any vendor. And the instructions on the system and the instructions in the instruction to bidder seem to be fairly clear. The transitions seem to have been very successful in Newmarket, and we're working closely with Newmarket to follow their key successes and to overcome some of their difficulties that they did experience. But training of the vendors is definitely on our horizon, and it's being provided again by webinar by the vendor. So these vendors can be all over the place, don't need to come here for training.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott.
Perfect, and I appreciate that clarification. And I think it is important to point out as well that the town of Newmarket has been a leader on this, and it's great that we can grab from their expertise to learn from them on it.
Are there any other further comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. I was wondering if someone would move a motion. I see Mr. Iarulo is here and he's waiting for item 12. And it's been a long day for him. So would someone move so? Councillor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We'll now move to item 12. And that was pulled by Councillor Thompson. Mr. Thompson. Councillor Thompson.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Seconded, Councillor Marakis. You have the floor, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I didn't realize that Anthony was waiting. Really just some clarity around it. One time we had talked about having a committee like we did the last time with some councillors sitting on it. I just wanted to get some clarification on that, so perhaps through you to the CAO, or if Mr. Iarello wants to come down.
How do you want to do it, Mr.? I'll ask Mr. Iarulo to come down to the microphone. Perhaps the podium. It's your pleasure.
Through you, Mr. Chair. When Council directed staff to begin the preparation of the update of the strategic plan, there was direction from Council at that time to establish a strategic plan steering committee. Given the delays with the project, that committee was not established. But at this time, we've done sufficient consultation, and I think we have sufficient information that one of the things we're recommending in this report is that committee be established, and that information around both what we heard, the draft document, and an environmental scan that we've prepared just to provide some context to the discussion be brought forward to that committee for further analysis and debate prior to public consultation.
Councillor?
Thank you. Had I known you'd been here, I would have just brought it forward earlier and stuff, but appreciate it.
When you say committee, Mr. Iarello, do you mean one of our advisory committees that we already have, or creating an ad hoc committee, such as we did last term?
Through you, Mr. Chair, at the time, the direction from council and the recommendation of staff was to establish a strategic planning steering committee, which is a similar process to what we did back in 2012 when we established the original strategic plan with a mandate of essentially vetting information and providing recommendations to council with respect to the advancement of the strategic plan. So it wouldn't be through an established steering committee, although our work plan does look for engagement with existing committees so that we could receive feedback on specific aspects that the committees are involved with.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson? Good. Any other councillors? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you for the report, and I would just like to say as a comment, the biggest challenges I see are, as you've pointed out, page 3 is the diversity of the town. Second one, as always, is the revitalization of Yonge Street. And the third one is the increased foreign real estate investment has the potential with vacant landlords to cause problems for neighborhoods. So glad to see that those are there.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barakis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick comment. Anthony, thanks. It's a great report. I think that it sets out that we've had talk about, we need a vision, and that's, I think, what the strategic plan does, is it sets that vision for us to move forward. And I think that a lot of us have put initiatives forward that help drive towards what the strategic plan is asking for us to do as a municipality, and I think that we're moving towards those goals. And I look forward to updating this because, Councillor Gardner mentioned a few of the things that pop out, and for me, one of the things that pop out is maintaining the spirit and uniqueness of Aurora as a community, and that goes to our work for the OMB and trying to give us that authority to keep that uniqueness within our community. So, like I said, I think that the strategic plan does give us that vision, and I think we've started and taken that first step towards moving a lot of initiatives forward to getting to that place that we want to be at. So, thanks, Anthony.
Councillor Perry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, Mr. Iarello, you often hear me talk about how you are taken away from the work of economic development from time to time because of your large portfolio and everything that you do. This is a great example of something that you do in addition to the portfolio of economic development. Just want to say good job and keep it up. And it's never meant as a I don't ever want to put you down because I know that you're busy and I know that you do a lot of different work. And this is one of the great things you do. So thank you very much.
Seeing no more comments or questions, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Iarello, for hanging around. We will go to number 9, and that was pulled by Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gardner, can we get a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move as is.
I have a seconder, Councillor Thompson. The floor is yours, Councillor.
Thank you. This is with respect to remediating number 9 Scanlon Court. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. MacArthur, who's not here.
Mr.
Simonauskas. So I'm not clear. Are we looking at a consultant to form a plan, and then we're going to have an extra amount for remediation? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Simonauskas?
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair. Actually, this is a consultant a contractor with consulting or technical expertise as well. So their assignment would be to do both the remediation as well as the documentation to submit to provide the record of site condition that we're looking to seek for that property.
Thank you. I'm very glad to see that this is the price tag for this. I think there are 10 or 11 houses bordering on this property. How will we be, but how will we be communicating with these residents to let them know what's going to be going on?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so the bulk of this work is actually removal of the existing fuel storage tanks on site, which are adjacent to another commercial establishment. By all means, we can communicate with that neighbor, because essentially we're on his property line to do the work. But I don't believe there's any residential other than maybe on the west side of the train tracks.
No, it's on it's the land south of this that has homes.
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay. Yeah. By all means, we can communicate
Well,
to
if
them.
it's not, but it might be a good idea just to keep them in the loop. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Simonauskas. Normally, when there's an RFP out, staff disclose the 4 or 5 bidders, and you did indicate that there are five bidders that came in, and I'm just wondering why they weren't put into the report.
Mr. Simonauskas?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Chair, I'd like to actually defer the question to Mr. Elliott from
Mr. Elliott?
perspective.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is actually the format of some of these reports, and the consistency of these reports is one of the areas that is in the scope of my review. For proposals, there's less disclosure with respect to a call for proposals than there is a call for tender.
Councillor? Could you tell me what the difference is
If I may, between a proposal and a tender?
Yes, please.
A proposal often includes large piles of commercial documents that disclose how some of the inner workings and capabilities and qualifications of the firm, much more so than in a tender. In a tender, it's very thin. It's, here's my bid price. I can supply you with that dump truck for this price in accordance with the specifications that you set out. Proposals come with all kinds of other commercial information about the company, their capabilities, their marketplace edges, and so on. And so there's less disclosure usually.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Are there any other questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Madam Clerk. And we are on item 11, and that was pulled by Councillor Gardner. A motion?
I move as is, Mr.
Move
Chair.
as is, seconded. Councillor Tom. The floor is yours, Councillor.
I think a storage, or in this case, 4 storage buildings, is perfect for this site. And glad to see that it's going to be used. My only concern is that there's on page 3 at the bottom, there's intermittent streams, permanent intermittent streams. It's a minimum vegetation protection zone, complex landform, etc. There's public open space, private open space. So there's, during the construction period, in order to protect these environmental features, can we have a vegetative agreement or a vegetation protection agreement that can be put in place during the construction period?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's something that we typically require. There is I think it's a 30-meter buffer zone, so development will not impact that zone, but prior to construction, the proper fencing and silt controls will be put in place, and the contractor will be fully aware, be made aware of that area as a no-go zone.
Councillor?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, or just as a comment, that is always required, but it's not always followed by developers. So how does the town ensure that that actually does happen, and not only that it happens initially, but the protective features are kept in place during the whole construction project?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have our inspectors who will be on site during servicing of the site as well, then again, upon construction of the building. So we'll have our eyes on the site as it moves towards the construction phase. We'll keep on top of it.
Thank you, and I think it's important enough to worth mentioning again. This is land on the Oak Ridges Moraine and has a lot of environmental features, and we need to ensure that there's. The other thing is, I saw the comments from the accessibility advisor. I believe there's only 2 accessible parking spaces required. There's 4 buildings. So these 2 spaces are going with the largest building. Do you know if any of these units are going to be accessible from the outside of the other 3 buildings? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I mean, there are drive aisles that will take you throughout most of the buildings, so they should be technically accessible, and most of the storage units have sort of garage doors. They're that size of units, so the two accessible spaces are in front of the building A, which contains the office component, but I think all 4 buildings should be accessible.
Could you kindly ensure that? Otherwise, we would need maybe accessible parking spaces at the other buildings as well. Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Madam Clerk. We have item 13. 13, and Councillor Gardner, you pulled that one as well.
It's mine, move as is.
Seconded, Councillor
Page 2. We've been talking about with our present fire hall, any repairs that are being done to it. I can't remember exactly what it was, but if anything needs to be done to it, it's the responsibility for Aurora. So for those of you on the JOC or for Mr. CEO, can we ensure in this new building, because it really is there, where it's located really is going to service Aurora and Newmarket, can we ensure that anything that needs repair, major repair in that building is jointly shared between Aurora and Newmarket? First of all, is that possible, first of all?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding of the agreement that as it currently exists is that there's an understanding that if the asset is owned by the town, then the maintenance cost would be the responsibility of that town. So it would require opening up that agreement to change.
I think that's too bad. Let's hear what Councilor Maracas says.
Thank you,
Councilor
Mr. Chair.
Maracas, you sit on the JCC. So.
As you do, and as Councilor Thompson does as well, and I think that we are, and Mr. Elliott, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we are looking into opening up the agreement, and as far as when it comes to the new building and in how the percentages will be allocated as far as how much Newmarket pays for any repairs compared to Aurora, and whether we pay full costs if it's in our municipality. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we are looking into that and making changes, are we not?
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as your treasurer, and I'm sure I speak for the CIO, the staff will be working as hard as we can to get that agreement opened and resolved prior to tender award for the construction of this project.
Councillor Gardner? Microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as a follow-up, we have the Stronach Recreation Complex. It's not that old, and we're having all kinds of repairs that we have to make on it. So, you know, it depends on how this building is built, how well it's built, circumstances of weather, etc. So I think it's really important.
On the build, Councilor Maracas, a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to add too, so we are going to, another reason we're going to look into the agreement also is because there's an opportunity that we might down the road end up amalgamating with Richmond Hill Fire, so the agreement's going to have to be opened up regardless at that point, so.
Just as a footnote, our Edward Street 4-3, had renovations last term, and we paid for that. And right now, there's renovations going on at 4-2 on the Gorham. So, and Newmarket's paying that, so that's part of the agreement. But this is the 5th, and it's sitting in here, so that's why I think it's important that we revisit that. All right. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Item 15, the last one?
14.
14? Oh, we need direction on this?
Yeah.
And Councilor Maracus, you pulled that. Did you want to? You did it as a favor, I noticed.
Yeah, I really don't have a direction to give at this moment, because I think that we all need to kind of discuss, and I'd like to hear what we're all thinking of as far as what we would like to see. I guess, I don't, do I have to move something before I speak? I mean,
you could just put it on the floor.
I'll just put it on the floor. I'll move to receive at this moment, and then we'll figure it out.
Received, seconded. Councilor Tom?
I mean, I guess I can just, everyone knows I like to watch other council meetings, and I was watching Newmarkets this afternoon, and they just passed a motion to not endorse moving forward with any changes to the regional governance model, and so until after the 2018 election. And my understanding from listening to the conversation was the reason for that is to allow for, if there will be an election of the chair, for that governance model to be part of their platform running in an election. And so that was the thought process that they put forward, to not endorse it moving forward with any changes in this term. So I just want to throw that out there and say that, and considering you need a triple majority to make any changes, you already have one council that's basically saying that they're not looking for any changes, so pretty much no changes are going to go through. So I just want to throw that out there.
Well, they have two on the council. Newmarket.
Oh, they have one in their mayor, and I think that all of us around this table would love to see a second chair, and I would fully support us putting forward saying that we want to see that second chair, our second regional person, but like I said, I don't think it's going to go anywhere, and maybe Mr. Mayor could speak to that.
Well,
because he sits there and he listens to what they say. So
I've got Councillor Tom, and then maybe we'll ask our regional representative, Mayor Daw, to comment. Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate Councillor Maracus's comments, but I do think there's an opportunity for the Council of Aurora to provide the region with their council's decision on what we think the direction should be. So I think it's important, even though Newmarket voted the way they did, to vote the way we think we should as well. I mean, I was reading through the report. The legislature, I'm looking at the mayor on this one because he's obviously was looking at this as well, but when the legislature was prorogued, Bill 42 died, the election of the regional chair. So then there really is no provision for that to be in place for the next election, is there? I mean, it could be, but at this point in time, it would have to be moved forward quite speedily through the process at region and at the province. Is that a true statement or correct?
Mayor Daw, would you care to weigh in on this? Thank you.
Yes, you are correct. Bill 42 is prorogued. My understanding, what we've been told, is it will be back on the legislative docket by the end of 2016. And there is speculation that it'll be passed early in 2017, but that's what it is at this point. It's speculation. I have no inside knowledge on that whatsoever. With respect to what happened at regional council, or committee, pardon me, last week, I was disappointed because I wanted to have the discussion then. And regional councillor Taylor moved that it be delayed until the province decide what happens with the elected chair. So as we're in a bit of a, well, there's delayed for 30 days, so we'll come up again in November. I think all we're doing is delaying the decision for 30 days. I'm absolutely committed to having a second representative for Aurora Regional Council.
Right.
But we'll have to wait and see what the conversation turns to in November.
So
I'll certainly let council know what happens.
So that means they're waiting to make any decisions on any other composition of regional council until we find out whether or not there'll be an elected regional chair. That's what you're saying.
Well, that was the thinking, but it's deferred until, it was deferred for 30 days, so to the next cycle. And we won't have any more information on an elected chair at that point, so
Right.
I'm not sure why it was deferred.
Okay, I appreciate that insight because I think it's important. I mean, I'll just provide my own comment at this point in time. I think that I would support a motion from this council that would suggest we would like the regional chair elected. We have said it once before, and I think we should say it again. And that would, again, that's a comment at the moment. I'd like to go around the table perhaps and see what other councillors have to say. And obviously, 3C on this sheet that was provided to us by our clerk is that council requests that or supports the increasing of size of regional council. I mean, quite frankly, I can appreciate the concerns in the regional report from the committee, because if you're Richmond Hill or Markham and you're not getting an extra member, then your population representation kind of gets out of whack. So frankly, anything that would increase Aurora's representation, I think is important. So if it includes an extra from Markham, Richmond Hill, as well as the other singles, I'd be fine with that too. So those are kind of my thoughts, at least at this time.
I'm going to go to Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, and I appreciate the clerk summarizing and providing us a whole bunch of options. I think there is even more that I would encourage the regional council to explore. But, you know, at the end of the day, you look at all the tables presented and there is an imbalance. No matter which way you look at it, you know, if you look at just the N6 participants, Aurora has the highest population per elected representative of any of the N6 municipalities. And so, you know, be it as a percentage, however you want to slice up the data, there is an imbalance. And so I think the region should look at alterations to its governance model. You know, I mean, we can debate the merits of all of the different ones. The only one I'm not in favor of is maintaining the current system, because I think there is an imbalance. I think, be it us or other municipalities, there needs to be some changes. And so minimally for tonight, I think that we should say that we don't support maintaining the current regional council governance model, and we encourage them to explore alternative options.
So, Councillor, are you going to move something, or do you want to wait until?
Not all members of council have spoken, so I think you know, it's probably fair to give everybody at least one turn before we put forward any motions.
I'll hold your being first to put something forward. Any other comments or questions, Councillor Perry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And although I understand the history of the matter, is there, and this is a question to the mayor, although it would be unfortunate for Georgina, is there an opportunity for us to take their second regional councillor? And I understand the history. You know, Pefferlaw used to have a seat, and so through amalgamation, Georgina, you know, got Keswick's seat as well as Pefferlaw's. But from a strict numbers perspective, is there an opportunity for us to take I understand they might put up a fight, but is there an opportunity for us to take theirs?
Mayor Dahl.
Mr. Chair, Councillor Perry, is there an opportunity? Yes. Is there a feasibility? No. That's just, it won't happen. That's just a reality. With respect to the numbers, if you look at the numbers, you'll find that Aurora has 5% of the population. We have 5% of the votes, and we've had that discussion on and on. And the conversation that Chair Emerson led last week at Committee of the Whole was that what he would like to see would be an additional seat for the four municipalities that do not have the extra reps. So that's Aurora, King, Witcher, Stouffville, and Georgina. An additional rep for Markham, and an additional rep for Vaughan, and an additional rep for Richmond Hill. But then, I mean, one of Councillor Taylor's points was that he doesn't think that overall there'd be a great appetite from the public in terms of increasing the size of regional governance. So that's why I wanted to get into that discussion. One of the points that I've raised is increasing the size of regional government is not necessary. Government, pardon me, is not necessarily the answer. A thought that I put forward at a workshop we had a number of months ago was can we have a proxy arrangement? So, as you know, I was on vacation in September and I did not make the meetings. Can I not have a proxy, a person who I would send as a proxy? And so those are the discussions I was hoping we were going to get into, and we didn't. So, Councillor Perry, I don't know if I'm answering your question or not.
You did, but then you kept going. I think I still have the floor.
Well, I learned that from others.
Councillor Perry?
And to be honest with you, I didn't like the old Bill 142 because it focused just on York Region. I think if you're going to make 144, sorry, pardon me. 40. That's I think if we're going to make that change, it should be a province-wide change as opposed to based on certain regional municipalities. So I would be okay with the election of a regional chair under those circumstances as well, because everybody's being treated exactly the same way. So I think on the whole, Councillor Thompson, I look forward to your motion, and I'm happy to support it.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think everything's been said, but I mean, just for myself, I've noticed in the 2 years that I've been exposed to council and in a lesser extent the regional council, clearly what we put in, we don't seem to be getting out from my perspective, and so that and and I also believe that the regional chair needs to be elected. I know there's a lot of complications and, talk about the costs of running at that level, and most residents don't even know what regional council does. So there has to be a huge educational communication process prior to that. But I think in the end, I'm totally in for a change in the governance model.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner?
I'm definitely in favor of electing the regional chair, and I don't know where it is here. At the moment, there is no mechanism to do what Mayor Daw has suggested, which is have a proxy should someone be away. I think you have to be away for a month. Oh, there it is. You have to be away for a month. So there needs to be a legislative change. So I would like to say at the very least, there should be a legislative change so that if the mayor is not able to attend, somebody else from this council can attend so that we have representation. So I would like that to be a very least in the motion.
All right, we're going around. I might as well say my 2 bits. Definitely in favor of the election of the chair and increasing our representation. The comment from the regional representative from Newmarket saying, well, we don't want to pay more for governance. Again, I think we should pay for governance, and as a percentage of what we pay for the total budget, and I think it's in the billions, and to put 6 new people on there at 50,000 is 200,000. That's not even a factor as costs. So that's just a way of saying no to our request to have an additional person. In my mind, it's a bit. So I think we should try and get a second seat. I like Chair Emerson's idea to start with, and so those are sort of my thoughts I would like to see changed if we're opening it up and we're passing on comments. So, Councillor Thompson, I'll let you go first to put some direction there for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've heard a few different ideas, so I think maybe it's best if we just do them as separate amendments so that they're not all bundled, just in case there are some that don't support everything but support some. So the first one I'll put forward is that Aurora Council does not support maintaining the current regional council governance model.
Seconded. Mayor Daw, comments, questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Councillor Marakis.
I don't know. I was just going to say, and that council supports increasing Aurora's representation by 1.
Seconded by Councillor Thompson. Questions? Comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Madam Clerk. Councillor Tom?
And I would just add that a motion for that council supports the direct election of the regional chair.
Seconded, Councillor Gardner. Comments, questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Free pizza lunch? No. Councillor Gardner?
Would it hurt the motion to put in my suggestion that at the very least, there's a mechanism to make sure that a council with one member represented? Can someone help me word it? But